10 things a beginning gardener should know right here on Grow the Earth. First thing is watch the sun. And what I mean by that is, whenever we're planning out our garden spaces, we want to watch the sun and see where it is as it tracks through the sky. Because we don't want to have weird shadows or shade in certain areas, because at 2 o'clock you may have full sun on your area, but at 10 o'clock in the morning, you may have a shed or your house or a fence or even a tree that's not even in your yard can be shading out your garden space. So we definitely want to track our sun. That's going to be one of the big things. 2, test your soil. Now, testing your soil is one of the major components that you want to do when you're starting a garden. And that's whether you're planting in ground, in raised beds, or in containers. The reason I say that is nobody's soil is exactly the same from batch to batch to batch. Even your bag soil is different from one batch to another. Yes, the levels they print on the bag are accurate to some extent, but they will change over time depending on who is making the mix and where they're getting their components from and all that other stuff. So definitely test your soil. Now, on the picture here, and I'm not for sure exactly where I'm going to put it, but I'm going to have 2 different soil test kits. One of them is an instant soil test kit, which is where you're going to go out and gather soil from your garden. You're going to put it in different vials, and it will give you the different levels of nitrogen, potash, and so forth. And that is going to give you an accurate test to some degree, because if you're planting organically, organic material and organic fertilizers break down slowly. These tests, the instant test only shows you what is available to your plants right now. The other one I have up here is going to be a soil test where you're going to take a sample of your soil and actually it's going to be sent off to a lab. Now that will give you a more well-rounded approach to what your soil looks like, but it's a little more costly and it's going to take more time because you're going to have to send it to a lab and they've got to send it back after they look at everything and get their analysis of it. But definitely we want to test our soil and find out exactly what we're dealing with before we start, no matter what medium you're planting in. The third, know your zone. And what I mean by that is the zone that you are in as far as planting. If you look on the back of a pack of seeds, they have different zones. They have different planting schedules for those plants. And you have certain areas where certain plants won't grow. So knowing the zone that you're growing in helps you determine what plants are going to work well in your area, your planting schedule to some degree, and it's also going to give you another key important factor that I'm going to talk about later, which is your frost date. We definitely need to research and find out what zone you're in, because that will tell you so much about your area that you're in. Number 4 is your last frost date. Your last frost date is very important because that is going to give you, now usually there's 2 different frost dates. You have one which is going to be your frost date that is 80% positive that you will not have a frost. And you have a second one which is 100% that you're not going to have a frost. Now, they gather this by looking at the different frosts that have happened over the last 50 to 100 years, and also the temperature of the area over the last 50 to 100 years. So it's relatively accurate. Every once in a while you have an outlier that kind of pops up and will, spoil your garden, but they're very few and very far between. But your last frost date is going to give you an idea of your planting schedule in the ground, and also is going to give you an idea of when you need to start your seeds indoors if you do that. If you have a greenhouse, or if you have, if you're planting in soil, your frost rate is going to be a real good key indicator of when you're supposed to plant. Because typically, you want to plant your seeds 6 to 8 weeks before you are going to move them outside, which should be after your last frost date. And on top of that, your seed, now that 6 to 8 weeks is kind of variable because it depends on certain things like what type of plant you're planting and so forth. If you're doing like lettuce from starts, or if you're doing like especially squash, they're a very quick growing plant, and if you're growing those inside for 6 to 8 weeks before you plant outside, you will have a jungle and a mess, and you'll outgrow your planting space very, very quickly with those plants. Whereas tomatoes and peppers, you need about 6 to 8 weeks before they get really well established to put them in the ground. Okay, our fifth one is garden planting. And what I mean by that is, if you have a limited space, then you want to be able to plan out exactly what you're going to plant and how much space they're going to take. And there are, you can take the approach that me and the wife have taken, to where we actually just drew out a spreadsheet in Microsoft Word and labeled and planned and just kind of laid it out. Or there are a couple of tools online. Some are free, some are not. And I'm going to have a link to those in the description. But what they are is to where you can lay out your bed, and usually it lays it out one bed at a time. And you have different items that you can pick from to put in that. And most of these are based on the square foot gardening method. So they're all little squares of usually 1 foot by 1 foot. But like I said, there'll be a link in the description to both of those. One of those is absolutely free. The other one costs $39 a year, or if you do a renewing subscription, it's only $29. Now, depending on what your finances are like and how much you want to take stuff out of your hands, depends on which one you want to go with. The free one will definitely help you lay out your garden. It also will give you a couple of tips and ideas. Usually it amounts to about what's on the back of your packet seed, but it gives it in a format to where you can print it out. Now the other one, which costs, will actually, as you plant, it makes up a seed list as far as what you need to buy. It also will give you planting dates and harvest dates. It will send you email reminders. It's a very, very good tool if you're looking to pay for it. Our sixth item is clean water. Now, if you've watched my other video, you'll know that if you're on city water, that chlorine is harmful for your garden. And we want to make sure that we remove that. Now, I'm going to have a picture right up here on one side or the other. Again, I don't know exactly where I'll put it. But it's of the water filter that you can look into, that will actually just go, it just screws right on your outdoor spigot, and it will remove the chlorine and kapton and large particles, all kinds of other things from your water before you put it on your planter, on your plants. And this is one key component. Other than your soil, one of your key components is giving clean water to your plants. If you're putting, water that's contaminated with chlorine or any other number of amount of contaminants, lead from old water pipes, things like that, you're doing a disservice to your plants, and they won't grow as well as if you had something with a filtering system that would filter off all of that stuff. All right, number 7 is water deeply. And what I mean by that is, whenever you water your garden, when it hasn't rained in about a week, whenever your plants are looking a little parched, when you water, you need to water and actually physically soak the ground. There's a couple of other YouTubers that have shown, M.I. Gardner comes to mind, where he showed about When you water, if you're doing the regular watering method where you're just kind of spraying and saturating the top of the soil to where it looks wet, once you get down about an inch, the water's completely dry. Whenever you water that way, it actually promotes your plants to have a very shallow root system, and it also means that they're going to be affected by heat, drought, changes in watering schedules, and things like that more. When you water deeply, what happens is the plant has to send roots downward to collect more water. A plant, it's going to survive. So when the plant sees that the water is drying out where its roots are at, it will start sending roots down further and further and further in order to collect that water. And if you're watering deeply, it forces that plant to go deeper for that water because it's not going to get that extra water that is on the top layer once it starts drying out. Number 8 is sow early. And what I mean by that is according to your zone and your last frost date, we want to be right on the cusp of that frost date whenever we're transplanting our plants or whether we're sowing in the ground. We want to be right on that date to give our plants enough time to come to maturity before our season closes down. So we need to know those 2 dates so that when we're starting our seeds either indoors or out here in the garden, we want to have our plants ready and raring to go as soon as spring hits. We don't want to be waiting until spring is here. We start our plants, they get going real good, and then summer comes along and just smashes us in the face as it does here in Texas. And now you have these poor little bitty defensive plants that are being baked by the sun. We want to give them time to get a good foothold and get growing before we let summer come in and just totally wreck them. Number 9 is learn from your mistakes. As a gardener, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to kill plants. You're going to wish that you had never planted something. But we have to look at it as a learning experience. I've been gardening for probably 10 plus years. And every year I learn something new every year. If you don't get overwhelmed, you'll learn. I promise you, you'll learn. I'm active on Facebook groups because I want to help other people learn how to garden. This is why I have these YouTube videos, because I want to help teach people that it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn. It's only a bad thing when you stop doing something as far as gardening goes because you've had a mistake or something didn't turn out the way you wanted it to. Now you will find that certain things grow better in your area than others. And we want to learn from that and learn that, hey, I can't plant that certain variety of tomato, or we can't plant this because our ground isn't the right consistency, or whatever it may be. But if we're learning from our mistakes, then we're moving forward. We're making sure that we're bettering ourselves to grow better every time that we plant. So we just want to continue to learn from our mistakes and just continue to learn in general. Even though I have all this experience with growing, there are certain things that I have not grown and probably won't attempt to grow until I do more research, just simply because I don't know enough about them to know what I'm doing with them yet. So continue to learn. It's always a learning experience. Life is a learning experience. Just make sure that you're using that learning experience. 10 is have fun. What I mean is gardening is a hobby to most of us, okay? It's not something we're doing because we need to have that food. We're doing it either because we didn't like the chemicals on our food. We know that food grown in our own garden is more flavorful and healthier for us. Or, any number of other things. Just simply knowing what's going into our food. And, one other reason is because I like to teach my children about their food and where it comes from and all the effort and all the time and all the labor that goes into making the bell pepper, the tomato, the lettuce, the cauliflower, the broccoli, whatever it is that we're going to eat. They see that it's just not something that just kind of appears out of thin air. That some farmer, some gardener somewhere had to work and put love and effort into making that food. So, this is not a life or death situation for most of us. So have fun. This garden is my sanctuary. When I've had a rough day at work, I come out to the garden and I may be working, I may be weeding, I may be, turning soil, I may be, trimming plants or whatever it may be, but it's my relaxed time, it's my cool down time, it's my clear my head time. And that's what a garden should be for us. If you're new to gardening and you're getting overwhelmed, if it becomes more of a job than a passion, if it becomes more of a job than fun, then you need to scale back. It's not going to hurt for you not to plant a certain bed one year. If you will learn as you go how to manage a garden, and you can scale it up from there. But I see with a lot of new gardeners is they just go hog wild and they go all in, and then it becomes such a chore to do anything in their garden because it's so large, and they haven't accustomed themselves to doing certain things that they just get frustrated and they quit. So start small, have fun with it. As you learn more and as you grow your expertise, then go bigger. But as always, have fun with it. And a bonus one, include God in our garden. This is God's work all around us. God allows these things to grow and prosper in our garden because He wants to take care of us and He wants to help us and He wants to show us His providence through our garden. If you're including God with in your garden, and you're praying over your garden, and you're recognizing His power in your garden will grow and be a spectacle and will produce as this garden has. I've had more people stop and ask about this garden than I can count. Because either they're growing a garden and they're having mixed results, or they're seeing the amount and the green and the lushness that we have in our garden, and they want to know what we're doing to make this happen. And if you're giving that glory to God, it's going to be rewarded. So as always, guys, like, subscribe, share, pray over your family, pray over your garden, and have a great day.